Hello, I'm Wally Haas. I'm your host for Rockford on the Record. I'm with Beth Howard, Executive Director of the Friends of the Coronado, and we're going to be touring the Coronado Theater today. Right now we're in Coronado Corner, which has a lot of history in this. So the Coronado Theater was built in 1927.
It was.
And it's been, various publications have called it the crown jewel, a landmark, the glory of downtown. It's just a wonderful facility to be in, and it has a rich history. Beth, tell us a little bit about the history of this theater.
So as you mentioned, the theater opened its doors in 1927. So these were movie palaces, and they were built all across North America to showcase the new silent movies. So this was something that our wonderful leaders and industrialists wanted for Rockford. And so it was built by the Van Mater family, who were owners of the Schumann Piano Factory here in Rockford. And at the time, the radios had come out into every home, and so pianos were not being purchased. So they were looking for another business model for themselves. So that's how this theater came about. It was a business enterprise, of course, at the time, privately owned. And it immediately opened to 6,000 people coming to see over several shows of Swim Girls Swim, a beautiful silent movie that was opening night here. And the article that was in the paper had such dreams for this theater, and I love it. It said, it starts with, royalty has their palaces, and kings of industry have their mansions, and now Rockford has their Coronado. So it was just this magical place. And if you think about it, when we're inside the theater, it's gold and it does feel like a palace. But everything on the street, every car was black, Model Ts, so imagine coming into like living color. So in its history, we had all the famous people that were playing these vaudeville movie houses at the time. Bob Hope was here very early. And I know we were talking about Frank Sinatra launched his actual career on the stage of the Coronado. So, we had the biggest and the best here, and it's a lot to be proud of for Rockford. And it's not only a beautiful theater for our community to enjoy, but on the national level, all of North America, it's considered one of the most outstanding atmospheric theaters in all of North America.
Well, the Coronado is unique. It's one of a kind in my opinion. But how many other theaters are even close to what this facility is?
There's nothing comparable. And so we were talking about it was just this era of movie palaces, and every small town had a movie palace. They were just springing up everywhere. They just weren't this size. So this is an outstanding representation, not only of this size of this theater, but this genre, which is an atmospheric theater. We have a sky. You feel like you're in a European courtyard. So it's truly one of the best examples. Not only for its ornate, it's very ornate and beautiful, it's large, but it's still amazingly intact. It was not dismantled. It was never not programmed, which is very unique. And that's why this theater's here in the shape it's in today. And
we'll see some of that as we go along. We have to understand a little bit of the history before we can really appreciate what's happening in the present. So let's start the tour.
Great.
Actually, do we want to touch on some of the exhibits in here first?
So this is our History Education Center. It's a place for the Rockford community to not only experience their own wonderful history, but realize the specialness of this building, and this history never stops. Well, that's what's fun to tell the kids. This is also where we bring students, and I get the chance to use this whole building as this amazing classroom in architecture and history and engineering. And that's what we are able to tell the kids about, just about how amazing these memories and the history is in this building, and history lives.
How many students do you get through here in a year?
Well, we also do the Reach for the Stars, which
I
think
that's
you're
right.
familiar
Yes.
about.
Yep.
So this year that'll be 4,000 students, and then another 1,000 or so come through with this Coronado Classroom project. But then last summer, I don't know if we brought back the Saturday kiddie movies here, and
That's
we
right.
had something where we had the Kids Cinema Saturday here. So another, 1,500 kids came through for that. So, but, we work closely with schools on just curriculum. If I had to say what's the most important thing that happens in here, I'm going to put the kids right there. We can give them that pride. We can explain to them why do they love this building. They actually tell me why they love it, because they like to imagine things.
That's great. So, this uniform here, you were telling me the story about Leon Wig Eli before. Tell us a little bit about this gentleman and the war bond effort.
Yeah, so when you come in here, you're going to realize that, yes, the theater does performances, but the world rolls in here. This is just an example of a gentleman that fought in the Battle of the Bulge, and for the 822nd Battalion. He wanted, in the 90s, he brought his reunion of that battalion here, and he was so wanted to leave that memory for us to remember that, not only that history, because he brought that history now for us to really be reminded of that bravery of these people that fought in the Battle of the Bulge. And so he left his dress uniform for us. So we're very proud to have that history of that, not only that effort by these brave individuals, but also that they had this gathering and were able to be together here and their reunion. But also, the other thing that you brought up
the
is
bonds.
Another great part of why Rockford has this incredible history and why we are such a proud community and why we should be proud. In 1943, Camp Grant was here, and Camp Grant put on a variety show. And in 2 weeks, they brought this variety show to the Coronado, and they raised in a single evening $175,000 in war bonds, which is featured in a Life magazine that we have a copy of here as the most amount raised in a single event across the country. So imagine that, it's just, there's so many things that happened here that were just at national levels. Yep. And so that's, just so many things in here. We love to have people come. You can come on the website, the Friends of the Coronado, and make arrangements to come and bring your group in and just enjoy. But even we have the story of the construction here, and imagine these buildings, are very unique in the space, the large spaces and things, and the amount of metal, iron, and steel that went into these, and these were feats of engineering, and it was air conditioned. So imagine, not too much was air conditioned. So
we don't need air conditioning on a day like today. But hey, let's start making our way to the main attraction.
Okay. So in the entrance of the Coronado, right under the marquee, and the architect, Frederick Klein, was actually from Peoria, so that's pretty exciting. He built only 5 theaters, but this was one of his most magnificent. He has a theater he built in Peoria. It wasn't quite as large as this one. But then the interior of these were designed by an individual, Walter Scott Bell, who traveled the country doing hundreds of these. And so the genre is to really, you are walking into a fantasy land, right? Your entertainment is starting at the door. And so you're not sure if you're in Morocco, you're in Asia, you're in medieval England, and that's really what they're doing. They're taking you off of Main Street, literally, in our case.
There's a lot of great intricate work
surrounding
here. What's the history on that?
The history is that they wanted to create this fantasy, yet give you the feeling you're in a palace, right? Yeah. So the gilding is important here. And as well, just this, I kind of, tongue-in-cheek call it the original faux. So, the balcony isn't really used, but it's, again, that feeling you're in a palace courtyard or something. And, there's hundreds and hundreds of these faces, and that are all over the Coronado. We have an inventory of, we call them the Coronado faces. And, but I was telling you, I get the chance to bring these kids, right?
Right.
So to bring these third graders, and they are mostly third graders, so 7, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, and they come in with a million questions, and they ask the best questions. They really do. They, of course, want to know where the king and queen are living, So, but also, I get a chance to try and explain the ticket grinder. So from a generation that's on a phone, their parents are using a phone to get them
Right.
in someplace, to explain the ticket grinder. And I have the picture of the gentleman there to be able to show them when this was being used. And we also have original drinking fountains and things like that here that aren't used, right?
Right.
So we're going to go up into the mezzanine. We have a wonderful organization that's been here since 1979 called the Land of Lincoln Theater Organ Society, which has taken ownership and maintains our theater organ, which is still here, but also they archive and keep the history, and we joined in a partnership in that. So then we have this amazing mezzanine view here. So these beautiful furnishings were collected from the owners from Italy. So this stone table has been here since the opening of the theater, as well as many of these furnishings that you're seeing here were out of some of the mansions and palaces of Italy.
Okay. Wow. So the lamps are
Yeah, original.
really.
Yeah, and a lot of people, that we give tours to from out of town, they're amazed we don't have ropes around things. And we did that on purpose. It's, of course, and people respect things here. They see they're nice, but we want people to experience them. And it's we've got the pictures that's been sitting, and actually it was against that wall before the concession bar came in during the restoration. But this is really probably the most beautiful views in the theater, we think. One thing that Wally, you might not be aware of is that the theater actually was supposed to be larger, and the individuals that were running the Rockford Women's Club Theater she didn't want it all the way to Park Avenue, so so this was actually supposed to be double in size. So instead of being a half circle, it was going to be a much larger space, the backstage, than was so to accommodate shrinking up off of Park Avenue. So that beautiful mirrored wall was actually not part of the original design, and look at how stunning it is. And again, just when I have the kids here to try and explain, these are the sculptures of the palace up there. And this beautiful chandelier is Austrian crystal. It weighs over 2 tons. And during the restoration in 2001, this was all taken apart, sent away, but these are all original. And that's so unique because the theater was owned by the Van Maters till 1970. Then it was purchased by the Carasotes company, which built and owned Showplace, right?
Yep.
And thank goodness they didn't try to sell things to make more money in here, so we're just lucky to have them.
Yeah. You've mentioned the restoration a couple of times. The theater reopened in January of 2001 after an $18.5 million renovation.
Correct.
And during that renovation, we tried to keep a lot of the feel of the original building. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the theater, between 1970 and 1997, when really that project started, is what you're talking about, when it was, theater had declined. The Carasotes company realized they just couldn't keep up. And so by the 90s, we had terribly leaking roof, that sort of thing. So I think carpeting was kind of hit and miss in here. There were a lot of things that were hard to recognize, but obviously the important things were in pretty good shape. A lot of plaster and paint repair that had to happen here. But we had photos.
Right.
We had photos from in a magazine that were in here in the 20s. And so we had a map to bring it back. And so even the carpeting, we have to guess they were black and whites,
Right.
but we had the patterns. And so the level of detail, so I think it's, and I was part of that committee at a lower level. And as you know, Marion and Gordy Smith,
Right.
that they were the ones that really led it. It came out of the Rockford Community Concert Association, right? So they went to the trouble of finding who's the expert in these, because these theaters were across the country, and they found an architect in Cleveland that they were the experts in this. And the individual that came in and restored all the paint and plaster, we still work with that company in Evergreen Architectural Arts out of New York, because they understand the buildings, they understand the processes because we do have to, keep up with, we have over 1 million people have been through here now since the restoration. So it was really bringing it back to that beauty, but also we took a movie palace and turned it into a performing arts center. So it's not like you could bring it back exactly like 1927. It wasn't going to be a museum. So it was that challenge of meeting the expectation. And I think what this community should be so proud of out of that restoration, one, we had 5,000 people contribute to it. So we had a lot of just personal commitment to the project and the importance, and it was those individuals that graduated from high school here and had those kiddie movies here, brought their grandkids here. So those, just that passion for their experiences here. But they, that commitment by this community to make it so beautiful. We added a rehearsal hall. We added the backstage. We doubled the stage size. So that theater, when we talk about in the Friends organization, we were thinking of the future all the time. We weren't thinking of that this theater is going to be this right now. We know what this is going to look like. The programming, varies for the times, and that's our challenge to keep up with, is really how do you keep the perfect historic nature so when somebody walks in, they're not distracted by something that doesn't look appropriate, right?
So, Rockford is, because of the people of Rockford, those 5,000 donors and others who were involved along the way, Rockford has something that other communities let fall away. Is that correct?
Those are the stories you hear. Some of the larger communities had 5 of them that fell away, So yes, Rockford, again, we talk about, this is such a symbol of civic pride. It's so many turns, right? And just the fact it's here today is, as we, I remark, it's really the values of this community.
Right.
And
it still looks great. And I know there's a lot of ongoing maintenance, but let's continue looking around a little bit.
Okay, we'd like to go up to the balcony.
Okay.
So this is truly one of the most magnificent views of the theater. And of course, you get a chance to see why it's called an atmospheric theater. You are under the starry sky of a European courtyard. And that's what the atmospheric theater has been designed to make you feel, that you are in Europe. This side you're in Spain, and this side you're in Italy. And then, yes.
And the acoustics in here are great.
Acoustics are great.
If I remember correctly, part of the renovation project was to improve the acoustics in here.
Well, you're right. The acoustics were really pretty outstanding, and you can even, you and I talking here, you can tell. Again, acousticians know you don't change you just don't change too many things. These are actually original seats. These were all sent out and restored. So keeping things as original as possible keeps that natural acoustics. But this wasn't just renovated for a performing arts center for tours and shows to come through, but our own Rockford Symphony and our own Rockford Dance Company. This was to create a new home for them. There was an enhancement system put in here to create, this is not typical for a symphony hall, and so we had to turn this into a symphony hall with what they call an enhancement sound system. So there was a lot of eye on really providing the best experience for the individuals here, but it naturally is a wonderful theater for acoustics. When we get on the stage, you're going to be able to tell. So I think people like to see that our Rick Nielsen seat up there, the black checkered seat. And Rick kindly lent his celebrity during the fundraising, so we honored him to give him a seat. Now, we kind of thought he'd want something up front, but this is where he used to come to the movies with his girlfriends, we hear. So that's his seat up there.
Very good. All right, so what's next on our tour here?
So I would like to, first of all, we talked about that these are all original seats, right?
Yep.
And so when there's about 1,100 seats that are in each, so about 2,300 in total seats in this theater, but around 1,100 and 1,100 down there. When you were sitting in this balcony, we talked about that this is a real feat of engineering. You were actually all the way to the 11th row on the floor. So the theater's been beautifully designed, so every seat is
a good one.
Is a good seat.
Yeah, from personal experience, I don't think there's a bad seat in the house.
So yeah, let's go down and let's go on the stage. We can look out to the balcony this way.
We're here on the stage of the Coronado Theater. We've just been joined by Doug Johnson, the Assistant General Manager of ASM Rockford. And Beth Howard has done a great job of taking us through the history of the Coronado. Doug will talk to a little bit about the present, but before we get to that point, was the single best event here ever the October 2002 debate between Rod Blagojevich and Jim Ryan put on by the Rockford Register-Star?
Absolutely, Wally. Not to be outdone by the 1960 visit of presidential candidate John Kennedy.
So I'm a second on that one.
Okay.
And I think I stood in this spot right here when I welcomed the audience. But anyway, so Beth, before we go to Doug here, are any final thoughts about the history of this theater?
Well, but let's just we've talked about that these were engineering feats, and you'll notice this huge expanse of balcony has no supports under it. And again, that was something unusual. It was so unusual, there was a movement to boycott the whole theater in the beginning. So it's again, it's that novelty of what was accomplished here. But we also, this restoration, let's talk about that, because we didn't bring this back as a movie palace, we brought it back a performing arts center. So this is actually where that original stage, the depth ended. So it was a movie palace, but it was also vaudeville. We talked about Tommy Dorsey and those kind of acts here. And during the days when that era was done, the theater was still programmed. We talked about that. They had Broadway shows in here, but left trucks unpacked. So they just couldn't bring it. So the restoration doubled the size. We brought it not back, but we went up, okay? At the time when we were designing this stage, the largest touring Broadway show was Miss Saigon. Dropped a full military helicopter out of the ceiling. We designed it for that. So a lot of capability, and this idea of being able to not only expand it, but when we purchased the building, the Park Avenue building that we were just in with the corner, that allowed us to have a backstage and actually a load-in area.
Well, this is, a source of community pride. It was a theater for the community that the community actually put back on its feet and the community has supported for decades.
It truly is. When you ask younger people that are in their beginning of their career and they maybe came back here for their careers after going away for college or other reasons, they want to learn about their community, and this really has that embedded history for them. It is a large symbol of community pride. When individuals in this community want to put a program in here themselves, it is because it is so symbolic. And so it was the pride of the community that built it here. They wanted the best in the country here in 1927. It was the pride of the community that brought it back in 2001. And it's the pride of the community that keeps coming here today and just enjoying it, and our fine city that chooses to own it.
Yeah. And today, come on, Doug, come on over here. I don't bite. I have the privilege of working across the street. I see the marquee every day. It seems that there's something fresh all the time. So tell us a little bit about some of the acts that you've been able to attract here and some of the more popular ones, actually.
Sure. When ASM Global, I'll give you a little history of that. They've been managing this building since 2012, along with the BMO Center and Davis Park. Through that and the contacts that I have, obviously, one of my goals is to bring new promoters into the building. And I see a benefit of Rockford being next to Chicago. A lot of people don't see that, but I do. We can work together to bring shows here. So one of my goals was to open it up and bring everything from A to Z in here. So that's what we're trying to achieve.
I've known you had blues here not that long ago.
We had Buddy Guy on his last tour. That was a coup. He was only doing 22 shows in America, so we got one of them. Those are the types of things we look for here to enhance the Coronado history, obviously.
So how many nights typically is the theater booked in a year?
We're doing over 70 shows, whether it's concerts, Broadway, community events, any type of genre. We do a show every 5.2 days at 70, 75 shows. That's what we're doing. So we want to stay as active and busy as we can.
What have been the more popular shows that have been here?
Well, we coming up on the 27th, next Saturday. We have a guy by the name of Charlie Behrens. He's from Wisconsin, a lot of Wisconsin humor. We have 2 shows actually, and they're both sold out. So, you know, we'll have 4,500 people coming through the doors next Saturday. So we're doing things like that. On the other spectrum, we have we did a show by Papa Roach, which is a 90s harder rock band. That did really well. We sold out the Goo Goo Dolls, which that type of music, that alternative rock hasn't been in here. So we're striving to bring more of that into the Coronado.
Okay. What's your sales pitch when you approach these acts? What brings them here?
Well, a couple of things. Due to my background, I have vast agent relationships, okay? So you have that, but you have promoters coming into the building. They have relationships, and they may make offers to an act, 10 offers or 12 offers, and we're part of that. Or I'll go direct to the people I know and say, hey, I want to bring them to Rockford. So that's kind of how it works. Obviously, Chicago doesn't want people playing here because they want to sell tickets in Chicago, but we've been successful through perseverance to bring shows into Rockford, as long as we're showing that we're selling tickets to the act and the agent. That does us a whole bit of good. So establishing that track record, talking to them weekly, monthly, so on and so forth, that'll bring new acts into the community.
When we did our tour of BMO a few weeks back, and I hope you all have watched that or will watch that, it was mentioned that the BMO attracts people from all over. And does the Coronado do the same?
Well, absolutely. So in our marketing department, we do very niche marketing, right? So I'll give you an example of the BMO. Joe Coy, who's a Filipino comedian, with their promoter, we co-promote with that promoter. He doesn't put him in Chicago. He'll bring him back 6 months later. So we target market into Chicago. I like to say my little idiom is we're your Chicago play, right? I tell that to agents. I tell that to promoters. It's less expensive for a promoter to come into Rockford, into the Coronado, than Chicago. It's less expensive for our patrons to participate in our food and beverage offerings, hotel accommodations, restaurants in town. We're just less expensive. We have people coming from Chicago all the time saying, hey, we love coming out here. Number one, we don't have the traffic. Number two, it's less expensive. We get more bang for our buck. So it's a win-win.
This is, it's a fairly intimate theater, and you mentioned comedy. I know Jerry Seinfeld has played here quite often. So what are some of the other comedians that the public may have to look forward to coming up?
We have a dude dad who's an internet sensation who will be here in February. We have a couple of, I can't say it all because they haven't been announced, but we have about 4 more comedic acts in the next 4 months coming here. So yeah, what we like to do is we use the Coronado basically as a petri dish. Like I'll get Joe Coy. Joe Coy did 2 sold-out shows here before we moved them to the BMO. So we keep it in the Rockford market, which is what we need to do.
Right.
Bert Kreischer, again, sold-out show here. He sold out the BMO in February. So we try to roll like that. Agents, managers, promoters see what we're doing here, and it just expounds.
Right.
When I came here, the thing that really set me over about coming to Rockford was the Coronado. It was just so beautiful, and it's kind of like the cherry on top for me. So,
Now, with your comedy shows, and you guys know where I'm going with this, right? Okay.
Oh,
have
boy.
you ever thought about having local comedians open up one of these national shows, like perhaps Kevin Haas, who does very well on the local circuit?
Well, you see, we can make suggestions to our promoter partners and the agents. Obviously, whoever the headliner is has to okay the support act. So.
Okay. Doug, you mentioned community events, and Beth, you've got a program with students for them to be able to enjoy the theater. That's All-Star Kids, is that correct?
It's the Reach for the Stars project.
Reach for the Stars, I'm sorry.
We
Okay.
started that actually when we reopened the theater. There was a passion again to share this with the next generation. So we bring in, traditionally we've brought in the 4th grade classes of every RPS school. That was a strategic plan so that somebody wasn't beginning their education in the Rockford school system and wasn't able to have an experience here. It was methodical in that way. We went to the U.S. Department of Education to pick 4th grade because it was an impactful grade. But the last couple of years we've expanded it, and this year we've expanded it, and anybody that gets a chance to watch this, if you're in a private school, you're invited here this year, because those are kids that we wanted to reach too. So we'll hopefully have a full 4,000 kids here.
Great.
With the help of the great management here, because it's a pretty
Thank
full.
you, Beth.
Yeah, thank you. So, and then that, but also for the 2nd year in a row, we're opening that Cirque performance for a free performance for our community. So again, just opening the doors. There's different reasons why maybe people that gives advantage when you don't have to. You can bring the grandkids, and maybe they can't sit through it. Take a chance that they can sit through and stuff. So that's February 27th.
All right,
coming right up.
very good.
I
So
do want to add one thing.
go ahead.
Something that I received a phone call from the 15th Circuit Court District of Chicago wanting to do naturalization ceremonies. So we started doing that, and we've had 3 or 4 of them here, and it's everybody should come. Everybody's welcome, but if you want to see, it's pure America. That's what it is. So
Lots of families.
lots of families.
Yeah, it's fun.
Lots of families who are becoming U.S. citizens.
Yeah,
So
watching their parents, it's nice.
Yeah, you just had one recently. I remember traffic was backed up for me, but anyway,
Absolutely.
it was good. It was a very good thing. So we've got a lot of great, we've got a great rich history of this theater. We've got a really promising future.
absolutely.
And so it's a wonderful facility, one that Rockfordians really should be proud of this theater. And if you haven't been to an event here in a while, I encourage you, you can, if you're just driving downtown, look at the marquee. There's always some fresh stuff up there. It's great
Absolutely.
stuff. And then if not, just go to the website, see what shows are coming up, buy your tickets, come on down.
Have a great time.
All right? Any final thoughts?
Come on down, use the theater. That's all I.
And enjoy the history here. And also I encourage you to go on the websites, you'll learn a lot more.
All right. Hey, thank you very much. That's it for this episode of Rockford on the Record.